if you find yourself stuck in a constant loop of eating mindlessly, or feeling that you can't stop raiding the cupboards for something to eat, or maybe you're just finding yourself at the end of a long day stood looking into the fridge and eating even whatever's there just because it's there, then this is going to be a really helpful video for you, where I'm looking into what could be causing those eating patterns that might have an emotional root cause to it, and then some really good steps you can take today to help you create more awareness around the pattern, and then also take some actions around starting to heal the pattern. And to start off with, just to explain straight away that emotional eating isn't a willpower problem. So that's a really helpful thing to be aware of, is that it often, when you're struggling with eating patterns, you can feel like it's your fault a lot of the time, and that you need to try harder, and that the research out there, of which there's a lot, demonstrates that that absolutely isn't the case at all. And so, who am I to be sharing all of this information with you? My name's Georgina, and I'm a certified intuitive eating counsellor. I trained with the fantastic dietitians Evelyn, Tribole and Elyse Resch a few years ago, after healing my own relationship with food that I struggled with for nearly 2 decades. So lots of emotional eating, binge eating, overeating, and then just feeling really isolated as a result of that, and not living my life to the full. And I also spent many years working as a physiotherapist in the NHS during those years, and it wasn't until I found the framework of intuitive eating myself that I finally was able to heal my relationship with food and body, and really make peace with myself, and be able to live a much more fulfilling life as a result of it. And so my hope by sharing videos is like this is to give you hope, like I felt when I was stuck at rock bottom all those years ago, that you can change how you're feeling about yourself and your body, and you can improve your health as a result of it, without having to do any more diets or restricting what you eat and feeling guilty about what you eat all the time. So, what is emotional eating? A sort of general rule of thumb for emotional eating is that it tends to happen when you're not actually physically hungry. That's not 100% of the time, but it most often happens when there's no physical hunger present, but you just get an overwhelming urge to eat. And so this can just include things like food cravings that arise out of the blue, for example. But also that they're a completely normal part of being human when you do have emotional eating in your life. And it's not always obvious that emotions are driving the eating, so it might just be that you're aware that you want to eat, but you might not know why, which is also very normal. And if that's where you are at the moment, this is such a good video to help you become your own detective, really, and start to get curious about what might be driving your eating patterns. But it's also very common, and you may also have some awareness of this, that you might be turning to food to comfort, numb, or distract from feelings that are hard to sit with. And so emotional eating can show up in really mild ways, so things like boredom eating, just sort of putting off a task that you want to do, so like procrastinating, and all the way through to coping with much deeper feelings like anxiety or grief, or even anger connected to some of life's bigger events that some people go through. And for me, I think I experienced all of them. Actually, I think I have experienced it in a mild form and a more intense form over the years because of my own life experiences. So I've got a lot of insight into emotional eating as someone that's lived through it themselves. And so the aim of understanding emotional eating, which I hope comes as some relief to you, that there's no need to stop it entirely. I think it gets a bad rep for being something out there in the world that needs to be eradicated, depending on what sort of information and content you follow, and that it's bad, and it's not. So in a healthy relationship with food, emotional eating is perfectly normal, and it's sort of part of enriching our lives. So examples could be if you're at a celebration and there's like a beautiful cake, and you might not feel hungry, but the cake is tasting lovely and you want to share this experience with people at the celebration. It could be just wanting, to enjoy a nice hot chocolate or something like that on a gloomy day, and a biscuit. When it becomes more significant and more problematic is when it moves from that sort of level to being used more and more frequently to push down on numb, difficult emotions without processing the emotions. And it also leaves you feeling physically and mentally not fantastic. So that would probably be your first clue as to where you are on the scale of emotional eating. But the intention again is to start building awareness around the pattern, start to look at what tools you need to support you, and then find more ways to meet your needs beyond food, and acknowledging that you should never feel guilty for eating. And that's a really important part of this work, is removing and healing the things that currently might be making you feel really, really guilty about eating. And so what's behind the emotions that can be lurking under the surface that we're using food to squash down? And it's a theory called interoceptive awareness. And so basically, interoceptive awareness is your body's ability to notice what's happening in your body. So for example, being able to feel your heartbeat, when you are perhaps going through a difficult situation or you're nervous, say you're at a dentist appointment, you can feel a tightness in your chest or something uncomfortable in your stomach. That's all interoceptive awareness, and every felt emotion has a physical sensation attached to it. So this can often be a lovely starting point for you if you literally don't know what emotion could be going on with your eating, but you just know you eat in a way that doesn't really feel supportive, and you're often sort of eating again either when you're not hungry or you're just not really sure why, but you've got this really strong drive to eat. Then just feeling where that physical sensation is in the body can be a really nice starting point to then explore what emotion might be relevant to that. And a lot of us have spent years disconnected from our bodies through dieting and food rules, and so inner awareness can often feel unfamiliar as well at first, and that's completely normal. And learning to tune back into our physical sensations and our emotions is a gentle, gradual process, and it just starts with noticing and with learning what to notice. So what you might then go on to is to look at identifying what your emotional eating triggers could be. And so here's a few examples. So boredom and procrastination, I think, is quite a common one. So where food is used to fill time or to put off doing a mundane task. So I definitely used to do that a lot a few years ago. It can be used as bribery or a reward. So like using food as a motivation to achieve a task. It can be to create excitement if life's feeling a bit dull or mundane. It can be used to soothe if you've got an uncomfortable feeling that's hovering around. Sometimes food's connected to love, so a parent that will show love through food perhaps rather than words. Frustration can be a source, and anger can be a source of emotional eating. Stress can be a source of emotional eating. So stress hormones affect digestion, appetite and blood sugar, and then that can bring on a desire to eat as well. Anxiety, so anything where you're worrying about something can really trigger a need to squash down that feeling with food, because temporarily it numbs the anxiety, so you often don't really feel anything in the moment that you're eating. And then connection, that's a really important part of feeling part of belonging, and that can also affect how you feel. So again, and all these things are a sliding scale of whether you think they affect you in a more sort of negative way that needs some attention. And so some people do cope with uncomfortable feelings and unmet needs by eating, binge eating, or even restricting food. Many times people really aren't aware. And so in the workbook that I've created, which you can find linked down below, we've got what am I trying to say? A toolkit in the workbook that's a really nice practice for you. And so I'm just going to go through it here on the slide so you can start to heal these patterns. And there's no right or wrong way to use them, but just have a look and see how it makes you feel and identify readiness to work on this for you at the moment. So the questions are quite simple, really. There's just 2 questions. So before you start eating, just check in with yourself and ask how you're feeling and see what comes up. So it might be that you're practicing what physical sensations you can feel. It might be that you're aware and able to tap into what emotion is present. And then your second question will be asking yourself, what do I need? And a lot of people don't do that at all. They don't think of their own needs, and then they just get consumed by the guilt of eating when they think they shouldn't, and it sort of overrides that really important question. So yeah, you're going to pause and breathe before you do anything when you've got a desire to eat, just to try and ground yourself, just connect with yourself. And then you're going to ask yourself what you're feeling. And then I've got a list here. No, I haven't. So there's a list in the workbook that's linked down below that's got a full range of emotions and also a full range of possible physical sensations that you might be feeling. So that can sometimes help give you a bit of confidence to tune into your body when you've got a list of lots of words to choose from and see which ones are resonating. And so if you don't know what you need at the moment, that's absolutely fine. So when you've done that first section and then you're going to move on to the what do I need, perfectly normal if you're not sure what you need. Generally, we're looking at 4 different categories of support that can be really helpful to begin to add a toolkit together to support you to process the emotions rather than relying on food to squash them down. But I must reiterate that the aim isn't to not eat at all through the work that you're doing here. And you may start off by still eating the food and adding something non-food based to help you cope. And then the idea is that the more that you do this and the more that you start processing your emotions, then the drive to eat first will naturally start to not feel quite as helpful or appealing, and so you'll find that the non-food based coping strategies become actually more desirable than eating. But there is never a time where you shouldn't eat, never at all, and it's really important that you know that, because that's very helpful then for your mindset and the flexibility as well. We don't want to create any further senses of you feeling you should be restricting food in any way. The more we restrict and the more we tell ourselves we shouldn't eat, the more it creates a drive to eat almost, and sometimes to rebel. So we're always giving ourselves full permission to eat, but we're going to get really good at actually asking ourselves, what would we need? What would actually be most helpful to deal with the emotion, with food being one of several choices. So we'd be looking at distraction is one option. So things like a change of environment, going out for a walk, watching a favourite film, listening to some music, anything of that nature can be really, really helpful. Having some more direct support, such as speaking with a friend, talking to a family member, or even having some conversations with a therapist can be a great way to process. The third option is dealing directly with the feeling. So this could be writing in a journal or being able to perhaps sit with the feeling for a few minutes without trying to make it go away with anything else and see how that feels. And then the fourth category is self-care based. So looking at setting more healthy boundaries around, how you're living your life, your time, your energy, sleep, rest, etc. Because if those aspects of your self-care are depleted, again, that can actually really contribute to emotional eating. And so a little checklist just to finish the lesson. Hopefully you now understand what emotional eating is, some idea of what personal triggers could be for you and how emotions show up physically in your body, but also that your emotions are all completely valid, they're worthy of attention, and that eating for comfort is completely human and normal. And hopefully what you're learning is that it's going to be okay, and you're more than welcome to start getting curious instead of critical about your eating patterns, to start to notice what you actually need and find new ways to comfort yourself, whilst also being really patient with yourself on the journey, and be gentle. There's no rush, there's no pressure to get this work right in any way. And you don't have to work this out alone if you don't want to. So there's the workbook below, which is the Heal Emotional Eating Blueprint. So that is basically what we've covered in the slides, but in a bit more detail. So just click below if you'd like to get that. And it will take you into my free community, which is the Nourish Your Soul Society. And there, if you would like to go ahead, it's free to join, and you'll have the presentation here that I've done if you want to have access to it in a convenient location, as well as on YouTube. And you'll have the worksheet and things to go through, and you'll have my support as well. So I'm really excited to support you more as a community as well. I think that women do thrive when they feel less alone and less isolated, and so it's really important to me that I've provided a really safe space for you to unravel, so to speak, but also feel empowered, and like I said at the beginning of the video, that there's hope for you to heal, and that you can do it, and you're not alone. So I hope you found this valuable, and I will look forward to seeing you in the community, and if not, seeing you in the next video. Have a good week.